Hey guys, welcome to another Marketing Monday. I am here with Sean Ochester with Sage Age, and we are going to be talking about planning for 2024 and marketing and all of those good things. But first, we are going to start with this. Well, Sean, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Happy to be here again.
I'm happy to have you here. Let's do a little, maybe 20 or 30 seconds on you and Sage Age, and then we're going to talk about planning for 2024. Although I do want to say one thing. It sort of depresses me that we're already talking 2024. It doesn't really feel like 2023 is over yet, but I know we got to start looking there.
You're in August. It's time. So you got to get these plans in place, know what the budgets are, know what the sales goals are. So something that you have to start planning with.
Great. So tell me about you and Sage Age first.
Sure. So Sage Age Strategies, senior living marketing company, been around for 40 years. We strategically focus on the sales conversion first. So trying to get the right lead to move in. And then based on that, we focus on tactics, whether they're digital tactics, direct mail tactics, to basically drive those leads over to the website to convert and then get that sale. So we're a full service agency. So independent living, we focus on independent living, assisted living, memory care, CCRCs, life plans. We do everything in-house for the agency side of things. So good group of people. We love basically working with all the senior living communities we work with today.
We're of course big fans. Sage Age is the longest running sponsor for Foresight. And we love partnering with you guys. We love what you guys are doing to make the industry better, to make the lives of people who live and work in senior living better. So I'm going to confess, when you said let's look at planning for 2024, and particularly you said, and maybe talk about it in terms of sort of seasonal changes, I'm sort of sitting there and thinking, I know you're going to smack me around about this a little bit, but I'm sort of sitting there and thinking, well, wait a minute, it's all just the same. What am I missing here?
So what we have found at Sage Age is in the senior living marketplace, it is not the same set it and forget it marketing plan. There are seasons to it. I always use the analogy of it's kind of like a school season, meaning that at the end of a year and beginning of the following year, you see this ramp up of conversions that come through. And basically you want to spend a little bit more during that time because we know people are starting to search. Loved ones are starting to search. Referral services are searching more. Even the prospect themselves are searching more during those holiday times. But you see a lull at times during this time. So in the summer times and things like that, we actually see a lull at times for conversions, a lull for how many people are visiting the websites and things of that nature. So you have to plan out your marketing plan to kind of meet those needs. Where are your seniors going to be when you're doing all that marketing? Basically also plays into that marketing plan that we look at for 2024.
So can you look, I'm actually really curious about this. And I will tell you that when I was in a long time ago, when I was operating buildings, that I know that we observed that there was more activity sort of Thanksgiving, Christmas, first month of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts on why that happens?
All the family members get together. So the reason why you see the holiday push and then the post-holiday push is all because of, for the most part, loved ones. At that time, they see their parents, they see their aunts and uncles. And so you have the adult-child influencer at that time seeing the needs of possibly their loved ones. And then that sparks conversations during those times, which then ends up to people searching more, whether they're searching online or they're searching by a traditional newspaper or receiving letters in the mail and things like that. But that's why we see that high influx during those times.
So when you see these particularly this sort of around the holiday influx of interest, or increased level of interest is probably a better way to describe it. Do you have thought? I mean, is the messaging different at that time than you would be at other times of the year?
So yes, but I also say that also plays into the care type. So if we're only focusing, say, on independent living, probably the messaging is going to be more so towards the prospect that's going to be moving in. While you still probably could have messaging that speaks to the adult child or the influencer, the majority of it's going to speak to the independent living person that's going to move in. But if you're talking about those care types that are on the health side, so assisted living, memory care, we are going to try to speak more so to that influencer, the adult child, or somebody else that's out there that's basically sees the need of that individual and gets them to kind of make an action or help to have those conversations. So we end up changing what we're basically talking about in some of those letters, direct mail pieces, even online from an ad standpoint.
What is the messaging that you find that works for the
Oh,
particularly that assisted living memory care resident?
so I'm going to go back a couple of years, and I know probably there's going to be some people that don't like this word, but basically safe, that word was used a lot, and it still comes up from time to time, is a safe place for their loved one, a caring place for their loved one. But the keywords that normally we end up buying more so are the specific care type keywords. So you're looking at memory care, Alzheimer's, dementia, assisted living, personal care, for instance, in those areas that offer personal care. And then you're just adding in the adjectives to make it reach that person on how they're searching. But as you stated earlier today, as part of the call, you've done searches yourself, but like senior living near me, assisted living near me. So again, what we try to do is get the right adjective associated with that type of keyword to make it of an interest to you to click on that ad to then take that next step.
So I have this. I've got it's actually a two-part series, or two-part article series that I've written. It hasn't published yet, but and I'm a little nervous about it because I've sort of got this idea that we maybe need to spend a little more time using guilt.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is the idea would be that if you, and it probably needs to be more subtle than this, but maybe not, is if you really love your mom and you want to give your mom the best possible life, you should move in to your
Senior
mom into senior living. I don't, what do you think? Is that too harsh?
might be a
Too
little
manipulative?
harsh. It
Huh?
definitely might be a little bit harsh. I think it's interesting is that type of wording is probably being used when that influencer or that loved one's talking to their parents, but you won't probably see it in an ad. It'll be interesting to see who takes you up on that offer first.
Well, let me give you the example, right? So if you look at the diamond trade, and this is what got me to thinking about it, is that back in the 1920 De Beers was they had these big diamond discoveries in Africa, and all of a sudden there was actually a flood of diamonds, and it was like, oh man, what do we do? And they found this marketing agency that doesn't exist anymore, but they came up with the diamonds for our forever, which they
Mhm.
still used. But the big thing that they did was they made it so that if you were unless you were a complete terrible person, you had to use a diamond to ask when you asked somebody to marry you, right?
Right.
And so they created this societal expectation that if you really loved your spouse, that your partner, you have to ask them with a diamond engagement ring. Otherwise, there's something wrong with you. And I'm thinking maybe there's some application of that in senior living. So
It could be. I mean, what we see on our side is if I'm talking to an adult child or an influencer, it's more of trying to explain to them to then explain to that individual on what that senior living community is going to help them with. So how much time is a senior living community going to help them with getting the possible doctor's appointments, making sure that they're getting their meds correctly, making sure they're moving around correctly, and things like that. I remember, I think we talked about this last time. My parents are living with me, so we've been looking at senior living communities. And one thing that was very important to them is how can the community help me get to my appointments, whether it's a hair appointment or get to the bank or basically make it to my medical appointments and things like that. And I think that type of communication style and what and make sure that those type of terms show up in the ads, show up in the direct mail pieces and in the email pieces as well, to make sure that we're speaking to that adult child on what is the importance of the senior living community and how that senior living community can help that individual as well.
So what's really interesting to me about what you just described, Sean, is that I think there's this tendency for us to believe that when we're messaging about senior living, that we want to be talking about lifestyle.
Mhm.
And even as I'm talking to you about this guilt thing, what goes through my head is more of a lifestyle kind of thing. If you want to give mom a great life instead of a crummy life where they're alone. And yet, what your parents are telling you is that's actually, are they not concerned about lifestyle, or is that just a secondary thing?
It's a secondary for them. It was more of how can a senior living community help me maintain everything that I need right now? So for them, there were some health issues. So how can that senior living community help them with their current health issues and getting to certain appointments because they didn't want to drive anymore and things like that. That was the main takeaway.
Well, when you look at this, do you think that that they are less concerned about the lifestyle because they see the lifestyle as all the same? I mean, is there an opportunity for senior living to talk about more, to do a more effective job about lifestyle, or are we just barking up the wrong tree when we
Well, I
spend
think
all the time on lifestyle?
lifestyle comes up in a conversation as well, but for my parents, it came up later. For them, the instantaneous need was around care and what we just talked about. Secondarily, when they finally visited the communities, then the lifestyle started to come up. Okay, where's the dining rooms if I wanted to go use them? Where's pickleball court if I wanted to go use it, et cetera, or
Yeah.
where is the pool? But for them specifically, in all honesty, even with me, the searching side of things was all about the care first and then lifestyle second. But I'm different, meaning that possibly for you, it's going to be the flip. You're going to do the lifestyle search first and then be interested in the care secondary. And I think that speaks loudly to how the prospects start searching as well. And this goes back to that for like online ads, everything's behavioral based, it's responsive based. So when you do a search, those search results have to show up a certain way for you, and they're going to show up slightly differently for me based off of how I'm searching.
So how do you manage, from an agency standpoint, as you're advising operators, how do you sort of make sure you hit in the best possible way both of those things?
So for us, it always starts, and I'm going to take a step back. It starts with the sales goals. So how many sales does that community need this year, this quarter, et cetera? And then from there, what type of sales do they need? And once as we know that, we can start looking into the type of ads we're going to be running. And let's just say if it's an independent living ad, we're probably going to initially start with those lifestyle type communications and make sure that the lifestyle language is in those ads, depending on where they're being placed. If it's assisted living or memory care, it's probably going to lean a little bit more towards the health services side of things. So speaking to me about basically the benefits of living there for the loved one can help them get to doctor's appointments or make sure that they're taken care of when they're needed, whether it's maybe some rehabilitation or something like that as well. So we show ads based off of intent, but we have to know first how many sales goals that community needs, and then we back into the communication channels after that.
Well, I want to actually explore this a little bit. So I'm one of your clients, and I'm come to you and say, I'm at 70% occupancy and I need to be at 95% occupancy, versus somebody who says, I'm at 87 and I'd like to get to 95. How do you approach those differently?
So we also start, the question I would ask you or we would try to figure out is what's your closing rate. So if your closing rate is a certain percent, I can then do a calculation to tell us how many leads I need to get you to get to that sales goal. So if basically the closing rate is say 4% or 5%, it's going to equate to this number of leads that you're going to need on a monthly basis, versus if your sales rate is like 10%, it's going to be much less. So from there, that's how we figure it out at Sage Age is we need the sales goal. We need to know what your closing rate is. And then from there, that will tell us how many inquiries we need. And then the final step to all that is, okay, let's kind of then split up from an integrated standpoint. How many leads can I get from, say, pay-per-click on, say, AdWords or Bing versus coming from traditional media, whether it's a direct mail piece or an online or a publication ad and things like that. But it has to start with your initial sales goals and then basically your closing rate of your sales team at that location.
Do you ever come in where you see the sales rate is so low where you go, well, maybe the problem is sales and not lead generation?
At times, that's where Melinda steps in more so. So she'll come
Right.
in and basically have those conversations saying this, we might need some sales training here, or we can help augment some of the sales on our side to help become the sales team and things like that as well.
Right.
Yeah.
So we sort of drift a little bit away from this sort of seasonal kind
Mhm.
of thing, and I want to actually come back to that.
Sure.
So it would, what I guess I find myself wondering is if we know there are a lot more inquiries during Christmas time, there's this lull in the summertime. I think particularly when school is starting back up, does that mean that you should have a higher budget like right now than in the fall winter time, or should it be the reverse?
So I would actually have a higher budget probably around the winter, New Year's, and post New Year's time. And then right now, at times, depending on the care type, you might have a lower budget and then start to ramp up towards the fall. So slowly but surely ramp up because we see
Yeah.
this time of year less searches. So, I mean, you and I were chatting a little bit before this call started about like what our weekends were like. And for the most part, even a loved one, if they were even interested or trying to start the search for senior living, that loved one is probably still out on weekends with their children and things like that during the summer. And right now we're coming to the close of summer. Children are going back into schools and things like that. So then the searches will start to continue more because conversations are going to be starting to have again with the actual prospect themselves and what their needs are. So then we see a ramp up in that spend and also in those searches that are happening.
I can see the messaging as being different.
Messaging at times stays, the wording stays the same. It can be modified from time to time, but at this, what changes a lot is probably the imagery, the colors that are being used to showcase a community that from let's say a winter standpoint to a summer or spring standpoint. Um, what I will say though, in the summer ads, what happens a lot is we showcase a lot more of the outside of a community. So if it's an independent living community and they have good walking trails, or it's a senior living community within a city itself, what can they go visit within that city? So we do that a lot from say spring, summer, and fall. And in the wintertime, it's what can we showcase within that community itself, depending on where the community is. I mean, for those communities that are in Arizona, probably a lot of outside activities happen year round, except for when it gets brutally hot. While if you're a community in Chicago, we're probably going to showcase some more of the outside activities during the spring, summer, and fall, and then inside activities during that winter time. And that just goes with the messaging.
Yeah, and I guess this is actually, so this is really fascinating to me. So then what about on the website itself? Do you change that so you do winter photos in the winter time and summer photos in the summer, or do they stay consistent,
They
or
stay
how do you do
consistent.
that?
Yeah, so it does stay consistent, at least on the websites that we manage. I know we have well, it stays consistent on the main website. If we're using a landing page for paid advertising or even traditional advertising to drive somebody over to that landing page, we will swap out messaging and we will swap out images to be more seasonal, because that's a specific page that like a paid ad is going to. So we want it to kind of match, but swapping the website photos for seasonality is not something that we normally do unless requested. Because it doesn't make that much of a lift. And most of the images on a website today are a good cross balance of seasonality. It is more so of directing those individuals to a landing page, and if that landing page needs to get updated with the right imagery.
I guess that makes sense, right? Because if I'm a prospect and I'm looking, I want to know, well, even if it's summertime, I also want to know what it's going to be in
Oh
the
yeah,
fall and winter and spring, as well as what it's like just
correct.
today. So, but I would assume that the ads are need to be seasonal.
Correct. The ads are seasonal. So the ads are seasonal. So whether it's we're showing a video or an image that's more of a seasonal photo that goes with that specific ad. Ads today, at least out online ads that are responsive based. So taglines get a little bit adjusted here and there as well to make sure that they're speaking to the right seasonal as well.
I wonder if anybody's ever played with sort of like do it for advertising for residents of like Christmas in July. I know that there's some discussion about when you're working in other businesses that you should give your Christmas gifts in July or August rather than Christmas because you'll stand out. So
It does happen. I don't think it was this year. I think it was last year. We ran a couple of those for a couple of communities that were having a Christmas in July, and it worked out nicely. It was a good turnout. It was actually an event, if I recall, so it was a good turnout for that event. And I will say also events play a big part in the marketing as well. So like when playing, say, Arizona, you're not probably going to have a lot of outside events in Arizona in the summer months, but you're going to run a lot of outside events in the winter and fall events in, say, Arizona. So taking advantage of those events as part of your marketing plan is another way to help promote the community and get the right prospect in, whether it's an adult child or an influencer. Well, if you're in Chicago, definitely out fall, summer, springtime is going to be more of an outside venue versus the wintertime. You're not going outside in Chicago.
yeah, can we actually, I know we're going a little bit off, but I think it
Mhm.
sort of applies to the sort of seasonal thing. Are there times of the year when events work better than others? And what kind of events do you guys see, do you recommend as being really effective?
So answer your first question. I don't see seasonal events run all year. Um, I don't see a seasonal pattern to events. As for the event type, the ones that seem to draw in the prospect the most that I see from a digital standpoint are things dealing with financing, understanding your financing, understanding your costs, things like that. Also, the events that offer tours. So come in, hear somebody speak about the community, and then basically take a tour. Those are still very popular. So all those type of financial questions getting answered are usually the events that we see a good push from the most these days.
Cool. And how often should you do an event?
Monthly is what we recommend. If they actually can do them monthly and they have the staff to do them monthly, doing a monthly event makes the most sense.
Are when you do events like that, are they mostly targeted toward people who are already on your prospect list as more of a nurturing, or are they primarily targeted as people who've never been there for making it easy for them to come visit, or is it a mix, or
It's a
how does
mix.
that work?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a mix. You're going to basically have a prospect list that you want to come in that are brand new, never engaged with the community before. So you're going to basically use that list. And at the same time, you're going to offer events to the prospect list of individuals that you're already talking to that have not made a decision yet. So, and those are two different types of prospects. So the new individual, probably you're going to have an event about, hey, let's take a tour, understand why senior living is important. So that educational series versus somebody that might be on the fence. It might be just some type of lunch and learn, get to know a resident type of event. So basically you have resident speakers and things like that come to them and come to those events to kind of speak to those prospects that have an interest but have not made a decision yet.
Cool. So if I were to just sort of, if we could make sort of a list of three or four things as people look to 2024, or can we sort of make some bullet point lists that we could give?
Absolutely. So certain things that I would start with, or at least what we start with at Sage Age, is the question of what's the sales goals. That'll be number one, to know what your sales goals are. And if you can take a look at historical to understand what the sales goals are month over month, that's also good as well, because it's going to tell us where we need to put some more money versus not and hold back a little bit more. From that standpoint, after the sales goals are done, we actually can start talking about events. So like, what do we want to showcase about the community in 2024? What type of events we want to put on, whether they're for new prospects or existing prospects, and kind of talk about that as well. And then from the digital standpoint, we also then start analyzing how many leads we need to focus on to get you that sales goal. And from that standpoint, what tactics are going to work out the best, whether it's online, offline, and things like that, to basically hit those sales goals. But those are probably the main three: is know your sales goals, start talking about how we're going to basically promote the community, whether it's events or we're using traditional tactics or digital tactics, and then focusing on those sales inquiries to basically get those sales goals that we want to hit.
Terrific. And what percentage do you see digital leads? Are they mostly digital leads that are coming in as you do this?
So the website gets all the glory, as I always like to say. But
Yeah.
I would say the website gets the majority of the leads, but they started somewhere else. So possibly they started with a pay-per-click campaign, or they saw a Facebook post, or they received a direct mail piece, and that's what brought them over to the website to learn more. So the integrated campaign is the key. So when you're laying out that plan for 2024, you need to align tactics. So if I'm doing a direct mail piece in January, what is the corresponding email that's going to go on with that to hit those prospects that you have emails for? And at the same time, what are we promoting online for ads as well that meet that same call to action? So they all need to like meet the same conversation piece and be in the same tone. So that way, no matter where you are at, you're basically going to see the same messaging to then drive you over to the website to go find out more. So to answer your question, digitally, yes, you see the most conversions digitally, but at the same time, the conversion started probably with a different tactic than just the website. It's just that the website gets most of the traction. We do
Yeah.
see that this is an interesting number, though, from the website standpoint. The website, it's probably higher. I'm trying to think of what the right word is. It's probably a lower, basically a toward to sale standpoint is off of a website, while somebody coming off of a direct mail piece is probably more so interested to come in ASAP versus somebody first coming to the website and just learning more. So we'll probably see a quicker move in off of some of those more traditional tactics than somebody coming to the website just to find out more so about the community and then have additional touch points after that.
I'm not sure it makes sense, right? Because I mean, if somebody's responding to a mail piece or to maybe even word of mouth or referral from a friend, right? They've got
Right.
to be very proactive in doing that. So they've invested more in it
Correct.
to figure it out.
Correct.
So I actually have one more question I want to ask. And we're about out of time, but I'd like to talk for a minute, and I'm sort of springing this on you in advance, so you don't know what you're worried about it. I can tell, but talk to me a little bit about differentiation between you and and your competition.
Yeah.
So much of the time in the industry, it's like we're all in the same game, and I I I understand where the sentiment comes from, but honestly, we're all fighting for residents, right? And I'd rather have them move into my building than your building.
So from a community to community standpoint, it's all about showcasing what makes those two communities different. So if I'm working with a specific community in Chicago and there's a competitor across the street, the focus has to be on what makes the two of us different. And again, they probably offer the same care types. They offer dinners and things like that, but it comes down to a word that you said early on: lifestyle. So what is the lifestyle difference between the two communities? And then from a Sage Age standpoint, I got to showcase that lifestyle. So I'm getting in front of the right prospect and making them more interested than the community across the street. So that's what we focus on, is the lifestyle component of it, to kind of showcase the differences, and then truly call out the differences between the two communities. Again, a prospect's going to consistently cross shop. Heck, my father did. He cross shopped out of how many communities, but at the end of the day, the ones that they liked, it did come down to the care that they were going to initially get, and then secondarily the lifestyle. So you have to show those shining things that makes those communities unique, and that's what we do at Sage Age.
So two more questions about your father have they made a decision? That's my first question.
No, no decision yet. They're still trying to sell the house in Florida, so uh,
Okay.
that's what's
And the second question, sort of relative to that, and this may be too not a fair question or may to be too hard to ask. But have you experienced a place where you look at it, you say, well, that place is actually better than this place, but this place has done a better job of storytelling than that place?
Hmm. I personally have not. Not necessarily. I mean, if I see a community and it's better than the other community, it usually has to do with maybe a little bit of how they're telling it, but basically how that community operates is what I see.
Okay.
Is usually what I go by.
Well, Sean, this has been a great conversation. Every time I get to talk to you, I love it because you teach me things and I come away smarter. And if you are an operator and you're feeling grumpy about your existing agency or you feel like you're not getting enough leads, you need to reach out to Sean and to the team at HH. And I appreciate the conversation. And with that, we are going to say